the notes that we need to take for abiding by the rules of recording, please? I haven't got mine with me.
Yeah, just bear me 1 second, just get them on screen. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the committee. The chairman has asked me to read some standard housekeeping points before we get started. May I remind everyone present that the meeting will be recorded by the internet and this recording archived for future viewing. Please could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, then please do so by raising your hand if you're on screen, or alternatively you can use the raise hand function, which should be on your screen on the right hand side. Please ensure that all debate this evening is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording, but by all means please use the chat function to highlight any technical issues or to grab the attention of myself or Councillor Charles. If you're having any difficulty hearing or being heard when addressing the committee, then please make that known again to myself or Councillor Charles. And please try turning off your video in the first case, just to help with broadband or Wi-Fi. I believe that's all the points for you, Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you. Beautifully presented. Thank you, Amy. Which moves us on to the Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday the 9th of March at 2021 at 5 p.m. Our remote meeting, and welcome everybody and thank you for attending. Part 1, agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any, Amy?
I haven't received any, Chair.
Any off the floor? No. Agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of February 2021. Would you like me to go through this page by page or would you like to move?
Move the minutes.
Move on block, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Seconded.
Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest, including whipping declarations. Note, members seeking advice on this item are asked to contact the monitoring office at least 40 hours before the meeting. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Moving on to the reports of the Director of Social Services, and number 4 is the Autistic Spectrum Disorder, ASD Adult Autism team, and that is going to be presented by Keith Ingram. Keith, would you like to take us quickly through it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll go very quick background for any councillors who haven't heard of this service previously. The service actually dates back to something like 2012. It's formed out of the Welsh Government Strategic Action Plan for Autism, and we originally created a thing called Adult Autism Advice in 2012. And that's grown since then, and we've added it into a Welsh Government scheme called the Integrated Autism Service, which is actually based in Penarth, next door to Penarth Council offices, actually. That Integrated Autism Service now, which is funded largely by the Welsh Government, has clinicians, local authority staff, and provides a diagnostic service and therapeutic services for the autistic adults across both Cardiff and the Vale. In terms of what the local authority work with, we work on the information, advice and assistance aspects, which fit in very well with the Social Service and Wellbeing Act and our requirements under that. So that's the local authority staff will be in contact with large adults who have diagnosis of autism and be supporting them in all sorts of ways, generally in very low level and preventative ways as much as we possibly can, helping them to live their own lives, helping them to be active and participatory members of the community. the Welsh Government is currently, you may be aware, and currently in the process of writing a code of practice for the delivery of autism services, which is part of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and will create a code of practice and guidance to be read in conjunction with that particular act. And the integrated autism service and the service that our staff provide will be inherent, and it's all over that in terms of who will actually be delivering it. So it's nice that something that started nearly 10 years ago in the Vale of Glamorgan is now as a part, albeit however small it is, in terms of the what goes on the national level. I guess probably most important at this juncture is to say, well, what's different in the way that we've been working during the COVID? Many things have changed, and many things are still the same. Obviously, a lot of the contact that we already had with clients was telephone, email, and that kind of thing. So that continues. That doesn't particularly change. Probably the biggest thing that's changed is in groups. Individuals who are autistic can be quite subject to isolation, not get out, not make friends easily, not have a large social circle. And we've always tried to have a range of groups. We've just had a monthly forum that used to meet in Barry, another one that met in Cardiff Library. We had socialized social skills training. We had skills for life, where you learned to cook and even learned to iron, although my staff didn't manage to teach me that one. But obviously we can't have groups now. So those have become virtual. And the first group that's been set up, I'm very fortunate that one of my staff is doing a PGCE, which is the Postgraduate Certificate of Education. So she's learning to be, in her own time, she's learning to be a lecturer for adults. It's the kind that you have in a college. And so she's used that skills that she's learning there to develop for us a post-diagnostic group. If you receive a diagnosis, in Cardiff and Vale, the first thing you'll be advised to log on to is what we call our post-diagnostic group. So that says, okay, so you've got a diagnosis of autism. What's that going to mean to you? What does that mean you're going to may struggle with? How can you work with that? You know, learn to understand the condition, learn to understand the way it's operational. So we have that. It's for recently diagnosed adults, and so we do that on a virtual basis now, using some software technology. It's a bit like, you know, schools now work online. We're doing that hub online. And we also have what we call the virtual autism hub, which is essentially, rather than going through a full referral process and, oh, let's have a referral, let's triage it, who does this need to go to, you can decide to, I want to have a slot in the virtual autism hub, and you'll get a half-hour slot with a local authority member of staff to say, okay, how can we help you? What is the problem today? And we'll work with them on that. So it cuts out that a lead time that you might get while you decide who is the best person. Well, often the best person to talk to somebody is the first person, and then you can have that conversation and work out what they need. And that may go on to other things. It may be that you can signpost them straight away and get them sorted again. I'm obviously very proud of the team and what they've been able to provide in the time here. They were recognized again at the 2020 Regional Safeguarding Awards, which was a virtual event like this. I'm not sure that I'm ever going to get quite used to doing everything virtually, but it has its advantages.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I had one today where I was supposed to be meeting an academic from Swansea University, and he got the date wrong. But it meant I just logged on for 5 minutes, said hi to a few people, and logged off again. If I'd driven to Swansea, I'd have been furious. Anyway, so I'm going off topic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I do realise that you have a real handle on this, and I'm sure you're leading the way with it. I'm delighted. I was delighted to read the report and to hear from you. Will this be passed over to the Education Department as well? The Education Scrutiny Committee? Nobody can help me with that one? Okay. Does anybody?
It shouldn't need to, because this is for adults rather than for kids. So.
Yeah, it's education though. They might have liked to have seen it, but so be it. Does anybody else have? Thank you for that, Neil. Has anybody else got anything they would like to add? Any comments or say, Neil?
Yeah, I put that simply. Thanks, Keith. I mean, you know, my my involvement over the years in this field. And in fact, just as an aside, if there's anything else I could do over the next, just contact me, and I'm always happy to help out in the field of autism. Certainly, I mean, you touched on socialization, I can't even say it, social isolation, and its effect on some of the people you're working with. COVID has put in a great deal of pressure on that, and I'm just wondering whether the mental health aspects of that is being more worsened really due to the COVID, and what impact that is actually having on people now, and what can be done to help mitigate it, please.
Well, I was discussing this because I knew I was coming to Scrutiny. Obviously, I was discussing it with my team a couple of days ago and said, well, okay, so how are the people out there? And for the majority of people, they're fine. Early on, they would have said, we've been training for this for years, staying in the house and not going out and being on our computers. But the reality is it's not quite that good. Issues that staff report having to deal with are kind of, broadly, it's the things that we find difficult as well, that the neurotypical find difficult. It's an absence of routine. Individuals who are autistic thrive on a routine, knowing what's going to happen today and tomorrow and the hours in the day. If you're ever in a school where there are autistic pupils, they will have a timetable of what they're going to do during the day so that they can work out where they are in their routine. COVID has removed a lot of our routines. We do things in different ways and we do things in different times. It might result, for example, in them playing computer games deep into the night and not sleeping. That's not a new issue very often, but there's a slight increase in that, because why do anything else? I don't have to get up in the morning. I don't have to go anywhere. What am I going to do? I might as well carry on and play. So there's a little extra of that. There's some evidence of increased eating issues. I mean, as I said, what do we all do? Either a lack of routine that's leading to forgetting to eat, or other people comfort eating, binging, sitting in front of Netflix with a bag of celebrations and so forth. And again, it's autistic, yes, but it can be more so than we perhaps as everybody's doing. Some people have been over watching the news, obsessing on it and getting frightened because every news report that you see, more people are dying, this is that, and that's very difficult to keep a handle on. So, we've been advising people, to limit that input, do it every couple of days, or only have the 6 o'clock news or whatever it may be, because otherwise you can watch news 24/7 if you want to, and that's not going to help. Some of the positives are that some clients who didn't previously want to socialize are now getting keen to do so when lockdown is over, because they've had this, they didn't want to do it, but now the opportunity to do it has been taken away. Well, perhaps we'd like to now. So I think that was a positive thing. But some do remain lonely and isolated. They're perhaps having their shopping from home delivery, so they don't even have the social contact of going grocery shopping. So many staff, staff have a regular set of calls to clients that they support in that way, because that's the social contact that they're getting, perhaps the only social contact that they're getting. So on average, the staff will have about 10 to 15 individuals that they're just giving a call to, popping an email in to say, hi, how's it going? And hi, how's it going can make the difference and help them, because the mental health issues are not just in autism, it's across the board in all the thing. And some of them have turned to Amazon, and that's the clients, not the staff, as I say. Well, actually, which of us hasn't turned to Amazon during this time? Okay, I don't know whether that helps you, yeah. But it's not too bad.
Thank you, Mike. Is that okay, Neil? Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. Moving on then to the director's report.
Rachel's indicated.
Oh, sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. Keith, can I just ask you 2 questions, if I can, please? For a newly diagnosed individual, at what point will they come across your service? So whether that be initially or at some point in the future? I'm thinking specifically for people who've been diagnosed perhaps with their GP.
if you go to your GP and say, I would like to diagnose, I think I might be autistic, and the GP says, I think you're probably right, I'll send you for a diagnosis, they will send them to our service for a diagnosis.
Okay.
That's the clinical, it's a multi-agency team. And one, if you like, a half of the team is about diagnosis of adults. So their contact will be immediate. And the first thing that they will have is access to a post-diagnostic group where they can talk through their issues, they can talk through what it's like to be autistic and learn these are ways that you can cope. So that, if you like, is a seamless operation.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Keith. And I just wanted to reiterate your point, Chair, about it being shared with learning, because for some of our young carers, actually, that might be helpful because it's a role reversal. Obviously, they're looking after perhaps adults with autism, so it might be a useful tool. So I just wanted to pick up that perhaps your point was very relevant, actually, Chair, because yes, as we know, there's this huge demographic of young carers, and this might be very, very useful. Thank you very much, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. It was very proficient, excellent report. Thank you. Next agenda item 5, support.
Sorry, Chairman. Sorry to interrupt. Can I just double check? Obviously, you've got 2 recommendations.
Oh,
in the
yes,
report.
yeah.
Are you suggesting any other referrals, or are you just going with the recommendations in the report, please?
Keith, do you think that it would be beneficial for it to go over to education?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what. I've never been to the Education Scrutiny Committee. I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
This is a service exclusively for adults. I mean, they could, in terms of what is available for young people transitioning out of schools and out of education, there should be an awareness that that service is there.
Yeah.
And that we are available, just as there should be.
Yeah.
I have mentioned
the point's been made in the chat that the agenda item has been sent to all elected members anyway.
Okay, that's great then. So if the chairman of education wants it, I'm sure he'll be in touch to put it on. But once again,
Hunter's got his hand up.
Enter. Do you have your hand up? Hello, you're muted. Enter. Hello.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was. I was merely going to say that what John has just said, actually, that all members have had the link, and I don't see any benefit in sending it to the Education Committee if members had the chance to see it anyway. That's all.
Thank you both for that. So are you happy to move the 2 recommendations on this committee? That the work being undertaken? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. Everybody else, all in favour? Yeah. Thank you. Which takes us on to agenda item 5, which is support for carers in the Vale of Glamorgan. And I believe, Natasha, you are going to talk us through this one?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Obviously, as stated, this is an annual report in relation to carers in the Vale of Glamorgan. Just as a point here, I think in future reports, I think we will change the term to unpaid carers and young carers, because that's what we're talking about. And I think that's the direction of travel. And I think it's really important that we distinguish and we use the language to distinguish that as well. So future reports, just to make that clear. I don't know if you were all able to access the link within the scrutiny report for the annual report. I don't know if you're all able to do that. If you weren't, that's fine. I can talk us through that. This year I've tried to do it slightly differently than giving pages and pages of narrative. It's just to pick up on some of the key points, really. We do have a laid and set out vision in relation to our adult carers and young carers across the Vale of Glamorgan. And that, we follow along the lines of what we want to achieve and how we want to support carers across the Vale. As we have reported previously, in terms of the economic support that unpaid carers provide, they estimate that there's probably a saving of around 33 million to Welsh Government. And that's increasing. And year on year, we see that the numbers of unpaid carers are increasing. There was recent research that was released for Carers' Rights Day in 2020, and that kind of estimated that people who are in an unpaid carer's role were probably, in the economic climate across the whole of the UK, stands at probably 8.4 billion during the first 8 months of the pandemic. Although this report is probably an annual report for 2019-2020, we couldn't provide this without talking about some of the effects of the pandemic on carers in the Vale of Glamorgan. A lot, or if not all, of face-to-face support and services such as day centres and support groups either significantly reduced or closed. And a recent survey indicated that carers were concerned that actually providing the level of care that they were providing without respite could put a real strain on them and their ability to continue caring. And I think that we really need to recognise that. Through the report, I've given you some thoughts and some identified themes around what carers were talking about in relation to their experience of the pandemic, how in the future we are going to have to look at how we develop our services for carers, given that we will have an increase of carers because of COVID and an increased number of people who need that type of care. There, as has been previously highlighted in the previous report, really, levels of social isolation has increased, and that was and is adding to the pressure the carers are experiencing. Throughout, or earlier in 2020, we have developed a regional carers gateway. This is delivered through Carers Trust, and they launched actually on the 24th of March, so that's nearly a year ago. And this model was to provide a community-based outreach service for carers. They would provide information and advice and where needed support in the community. However, due to COVID pandemic, we had to support them to adapt that delivery model and they moved into providing telephone and online services, contacting carers who we already knew about, but also providing information and advice, signposting to those new carers that were coming into contact with them. This gateway has been a huge success, really, in as much as it has provided real-time support and advice for carers. It has also increased the awareness. It's also, in terms of identification of carers, it's provided us with a much wider understanding of carers across the Vale. This will continue, this service. The gateway will continue to develop, and they're also doing some of the proportionate carers assessments, albeit via telephone or via remote platforms such as Teams. There is within the report some data around that, and I've also put a link into the Carers Gateway website if anyone wants to take a look at that. So in terms of locally and within the local authority, what we've had to do is our contracted carers services have generally moved their services online, whether that's face-to-face, individual support meetings or group meetings. Carer support officers have replaced some of their home visits with telephone calls or virtual assessments, but those things are continuing. In relation to young carers, our Young Carers project that we support through YMCA has continued to accept referrals and conduct assessments and also provide support. There has been some, when we were able to, there were some drop-in appointments with social distancing measures in place, but currently that's kind of been suspended. Weekly newsletters and information has been sent out to young carers and to families, and information about activities that people can get involved with. We were lucky enough to accept some Chromebooks for our young carers across the Vale, and Welsh Government provided those with data allowances. So not only just having the equipment and the IT to do that, but also to have data so people could connect and get involved in some of those other projects. The Young Carers in Schools programme has continued, and young carers, there are lots of information and support coming out through our schools. I'm aware that all identified young carers were considered within the vulnerable children and vulnerable learners group that was set up during COVID, and I would say from the information I had was 99% of those young carers were seen or were offered support during that time. Nationally, there is a review of the current carers strategy from Welsh Government ongoing, and looking at what support will be needed and how services will need to be shaped going forward.
Thank you.
I've got lots of information in the report, but I'm happy to take any further questions or anything people would like to.
Yeah, I do feel that this recommendation, as the annual report is in response to carers, perhaps should go to the Education Committee.
Yes.
That would be good. Anybody any questions?
We have forwarded to learning in the past because of the young carer aspect. It's one that we last time this came up, we banded over to learning as well for them to consider. I did have my hand up as well. Natasha, I indicated at the conference I was going to ask this basically, and you have addressed it to a certain extent, is the amount of support for carers that schools are actually providing, because they're in the unique position of being able to or should have been in the unique position of having identified. And I know that the majority of schools certainly are engaged in this. I'm led to believe there are still one or two recalcitrant schools who think this perhaps doesn't relate to their students when we know it does. Where are we with that?
Yeah, so obviously you did indicate that you wanted some further information about that, and what I can tell you, and is I'm confident every school that has an identified young carers lead, and that's both across secondary and primary school. So significant work has happened around that particularly within the last 12 months. I think what the key thing to take from that is, although you might have an identified lead for young carers in a school, it is down to the young carer themselves to decide who their link person will be. So as an example, the head of a year group may be the lead for young carers. However, the child or young person might indicate that they have a good relationship with a teaching assistant, and that particular teaching assistant will be the link for that young person. So there's kind of an overview strategically from somebody within the school, but in terms of making that individual to the needs of the young carer, they may have a different person.
And we're happy that that's flowing nicely, and those links are working in all settings.
In all settings, from the information I have gathered from my colleagues, yes. And actually,
this wasn't the case a year ago. There were schools turning around saying no, we're not engaging with this, but that's changed.
Yeah, and I think a number of developments have happened in terms of the young carer agenda. There are particular requirements in ESTIN and data sets and information for framework of inspections for ESTIN that requires our colleagues in education to provide support for young carers and to give outcomes for young carers. So I think that work has progressed quite a lot within the last 12 months.
Thank you. Excellent news.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Natasha. Rachel?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Natasha. Very encouraging to listen to all this positivity. Yeah, it's great. Just referring to the sort of highlighted amount of savings through our young carers, and also all of the unpaid carers that we've highlighted, a saving about 33 million. Is that correct? Is that what you were saying, Natasha?
Yeah, I would say that's not for us as in the Vale of Glamorgan. I think that's what's estimated by a Welsh Government and nationally.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, nationally. So, you know, in terms of a message clearly to Welsh Government, what do you want to be saying? You know, you've identified this huge section of unpaid, you know, voluntary carers through fantastic initiatives like Gateway, etc. What's the message we need to be getting as a local authority to Welsh Government with regards to, you know, the support that's needed so we can continue this work? But the recognition is critical, I think.
I think the way in which that is happening is through our representation on ministerial advisory groups. So we are represented through the Carers Ministerial Advisory Group, and that group shapes and informs the Minister around resources, that's financial, the direction of travel in terms of support services that are required, what the landscape is looking like, and we have the opportunity to influence and contribute to that. And that has, you know, that is happening, and points. I think the new Welsh Government Carers strategy has been out for consultation as well, and we've contributed to that consultation. Undoubtedly, you know, there is an appetite from Welsh Government to support carers' agenda, and to relook at what's needed in response to COVID as well, because that will change what's needed.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, thank you very much, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else have any more questions? No. There are 5 recommendations. Are you all in favour of the 5 recommendations? Can we move? Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Which takes us on.
Is the bit about referral to education in regard to learning? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Item 2. Yeah, learning and culture. I apologise. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 6 is the revenue and capital monitoring for the period of the 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of January 2021. And I believe Caroline Michael. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to take us through, please?
Yes, thank you. This month, we're showing an improved position for the services within this committee's remit. We are showing now an underspend projected at year end of £100,000 for children's, and also on adults it's an improved position, but it is still £1 million overspent. It was previously 1.5, so as I say, it is an improved position. For adult services, the area where we're showing the improvement is under the staffing heading. This is a mixture of issues. We are gaining additional funding from Welsh Government, which is helping us with our staffing costs, and also there are some vacancies which have occurred during the year. We are obviously continuing to recruit, but there have been some vacant positions during the year. In a similar manner to previous years, we are, as we speak, receiving additional grant funding from Welsh Government. So, I mean, this has happened in the past. So I'd like to say that by year end, we will have an improved position yet again. As I say, it does depend how much money comes to us, but we are in the process of receiving additional funding from Welsh Government. With regard to the capital section of the report, we have reported a couple of additional grants, and there are a few schemes there that we've reported where we have been unable to progress work as we would have liked, and we've asked for the budget to be carried forward and the works will be completed next year. That's a summary of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? I'm pleased that we are in a much better position now than we were. There is one recommendation if people haven't got anything to ask. Is somebody happy to move the recommendation? Thank you, John. Which moves us nicely on to agenda item 7, which is the annual delivery plan monitoring report, Q3 performance 2020 to 2021. And I believe that's yours, Lance.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. Members will be pleased to know I'm not going to try and read all of this report because it's huge and there's it would take all evening. I suppose what you have is obviously the Q3 performance for the whole council. There are probably obviously we need to look at this from this scrutiny committee's perspective for not just this report but also the one that comes after it. Because there is all of that other information in there as well. Members will probably spot quite quickly that there are annual performance measures that because they're annual we haven't reported on them, so there are some gaps, and of course you know you're already aware of this, but obviously the implications of the pandemic, particularly for social services, have been extreme, and so that has inevitably had an effect on our ability to complete actions, and so we would normally be sitting here with perhaps one or two that have been particularly difficult, and obviously it's a much more substantial percentage than we would want. That said, I would much rather we had responded to the needs of our vulnerable population as a result of the pandemic than continued with these actions. So I suppose that rather than me say any more, I think if you have any questions or queries, it's probably best if you're able to kind of give us some page numbers and we would respond to those as we can.
Yeah, I think that's wise. Thank you, Lance. Does anybody have any questions? No? In that case, there are a recommendation. Are we happy to move the recommendations? There are 3. Oh, sorry, Neil. Then Rachel.
Julie's got a hand up.
Sorry, Julie. Then you. Did you want to say something, Neil?
No.
Rachel, did you want to say something? Just moving the recommendations. Julie, did you want to say something?
Yes, sorry, I'd just like to bring the committee's attention to page 101 of the delivery plan concerning domestic abuse. And I'd like to thank all concerned for achieving this result. I think it's great news.
Thank you, Julie. It's an excellent point you've made. Thank you. Yeah, so we've had somebody to move and somebody to second, which takes us on to the final agenda item, which is agenda item 8. The service plans and target settings to deliver the Vale of Glamorgan annual delivery delivery plan, improvement plan part 1, 2021-2022. You again, Lance.
Yes, and I
in the hot seat.
Sorry, yeah. Similar to the last report, I suppose this covers the whole council. There's a huge amount in there. I suppose the difference obviously here is that we're looking forward and it's an improvement plan. And I think it's important that the members endorse the priority actions, particularly for children, young people services, resource management, safeguarding adult services, and of course leisure services. So Dave is here. That those ones can be found in the neighbourhood services and transport section. Again, I wasn't planning to go through this or try to summarise because there is so much of it, but I'm happy to answer questions or field those to colleagues should it be needed.
Yeah, so it's definitely bedtime reading. I have read it. I'm presuming everybody else has read it. So are we all happy with this report? Neil, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one small bit on page 2 of the service plan thing, where we're talking about the Vale of Glamorgan Substance Misuse Service. I'm presuming that actually we're talking here about harm reduction rather than anything else in the way that the service is working. Am I right in that assumption? It's towards the bottom of page 2, the second bullet point from the bottom.
What I can advise is that the harm reduction principles are the principles that the substance misuse team operates to. But I'm struggling to find the bit that you're talking about. Is it on? Okay. Yes. Yes, that would be the case. So it does work towards a harm reduction model and
yes.
partnership with voluntary sector too. Sorry, Suzanne, I don't know whether you want to come in as well. But...
It's fine. What you said was what I was going to say, so it's fine. Thank you.
Well, I haven't got any items which are urgent, so thank you all very much for attending this evening. The good news is you haven't got to drive home, and thank you all very much, and see you all on Wednesday. Good night and God bless.
Good night.
Night.
Right, Chair. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.